And Nikesh, maybe that's something it's worth talking about. Like, so I have two children, they're quite small. I think yours are a bit older, Nikesh. Like, how have you kept your mum's memory alive for them? How do you have those conversations about someone who they can't experience?
Yeah, they're 3 and 6, and
I,
it's an ongoing conversation with them. Yeah, I wrote about this quite a lot when I was writing columns for The Guardian about my daughter's obsession with my mum being dead. And yeah, like this was kind of, I was supposed to write a book about parenthood. Um, that's coming out next February, and it ended up being a book about losing a parent and becoming a parent. And the thing that I've found with my kid, with my eldest daughter, is just to be really matter of fact about it. And she definitely had moments where just the idea of not existing anymore really freaked her out. Um, but I sort of offhandedly once said to her that her hands really looked like my mum's hands, and that's really stayed with her. And she brings that up all the time whenever my mum's name is invoked. She'll say, "I have her hands," in that way that she doesn't really mean anything, but like she doesn't really know what it means, but it sort of means something to her. And recently she said something that really just came out of nowhere. We were driving, and then she was just sort of looking out the window and thinking to herself, and she said, "I know how we can be together forever, even when we're dead." And I was like, "Okay." And she said, "All we have to do is just, when we die, we just need to hold hands, and then we'll be together forever." And it just broke my heart, because I think that idea that, by holding her hand and it looked like my mum's hand, it would just remind me of my mum. I think that's sort of what she was trying to process and try and get across to me in a very loving and empathetic way. But yeah, I don't think she sort of necessarily understands the physicality of death, like when someone is physically removed from your life, what that does, because she probably just hasn't experienced that yet. So conceptually, um, it is an ongoing conversation, I think. And it's a hard one, because she knows that I feel sad about my mum not being around, but at the same time, she sort of wants to know more about her.
I think that's, I mean, one, what a heartbreaking, beautiful thing to say. Your daughter is obviously going to be a writer, because that is like, she gave you some poetry and some metaphors, some similes are right there. Um, but I think again we come back to this thing of like not, and I really stick by this of like not getting stuck in something. So if something works here 1 to 5, it doesn't mean it's going to work 5 to 10, 10 to 15. Like this, you grieve, it doesn't go away. You just process it differently. You learn to live with it, and I think that happens in the same way of having conversation with kids. Yeah, my daughter is only like nearly 4, so I've said before like my dad's dead, and she's like, hmm? Like, okay, great, thanks for telling me. And my husband had a really bizarre experience that he was in the playground with her, which I think for some kids is unusual that there is a dad in the playground. Sometimes it is. And so this little boy was very interested in him, and he was like, is like, are you the daddy? And he was like, yeah. And he was like, oh right, okay. And then he was like, where's her mummy? My husband was like, oh well, she's at home. And he was like, hmm. And he just turned to my husband and he said, where's your mummy? my, my husband has lost both his parents, and he was like, oh, she's dead. And then this kid just ran away saying, his mum is dead, his mum is dead, across the whole playground. And my husband was like, way to go, sensitivity. Like, and it was like, he said it was so funny because he was trying to be honest with this child, and then this child just screamed it in his face. And he was like, yeah, maybe don't tell them all the time, like, be honest. But I do think it's really important that it's kind of, I mean, I find it funny that kids just don't understand it, and I think it's quite nice sometimes to have a break from those conversations, because as an adult you get very used to being like, brace yourself, I have to tell them my dad's dead. So, well, actually he died when I was 15, and it's quite nice to say it to a child who's just like, all right, like, it's as normal as you're having scrambled eggs. Like, it's just, that's it.